Tonight, you'll join a young wizard named Felix and his wise cat companion, Whiskers, on the most magical adventure. Together, you'll discover an ancient book of spells that holds secrets beyond imagination. You'll visit places where stars dance, where flowers sing, and where every step brings a new wonder. Let Felix's journey carry you into the most peaceful dreams, filled with magic, friendship, and the warm glow of starlight. Felix was 7 years old and already showed signs of being quite a special wizard. His curly brown hair seemed to sparkle when he was excited, and his green eyes twinkled whenever magic was near. He could make flowers bloom with just a gentle touch, and sometimes, when he laughed really hard, tiny golden stars would float around his head for just a moment before fading away. Felix shared his cozy cottage with Whiskers, a remarkably clever gray cat with silver whiskers that seemed to shimmer in moonlight. Whiskers had been Felix's friend for as long as he could remember, and though most cats only purred and meowed, Whiskers could speak in a soft, gentle voice that sounded like autumn leaves rustling together. One quiet evening, as rain tapped softly against the windows and the fireplace crackled with warm orange flames, Felix felt drawn to explore the cottage's old attic. He had been up there before, but tonight felt different. Something magical was calling to him from among the dusty trunks and forgotten treasures. Whiskers followed close behind as Felix climbed the creaky wooden stairs. The cat's silver whiskers twitched with curiosity as he mentioned that he could sense something very special waiting for them in the shadows above. The attic was filled with moonbeams streaming through a small round window, casting everything in soft, silvery light. Old furniture stood covered in white sheets like friendly ghosts, and boxes of memories sat stacked in neat towers. But in the very back corner, behind a rocking chair that had belonged to Felix's grandmother, something glowed with the faintest blue light. Felix approached carefully, his bare feet silent on the wooden floor. Sitting on an ancient oak table was the most beautiful book he had ever seen. Its cover was made of deep blue leather that seemed to hold the night sky within it, complete with tiny stars that actually twinkled. Golden threads formed patterns across the cover, and the edges of the pages shimmered like morning frost. Whiskers padded up beside Felix and gazed at the book with his wise yellow eyes. The cat observed that this was no ordinary book, but something that had been waiting patiently for exactly the right young wizard to find it. As Felix reached out with trembling fingers to touch the cover, the book seemed to recognize him. The stars on the cover began to glow more brightly, and the golden threads started to move like tiny rivers of light. When his hand finally made contact with the magical leather, Felix felt a warm, tingling sensation travel up his arm and straight to his heart. The book opened by itself with a soft whisper, and the pages began to turn slowly, as if an invisible friend was showing Felix all the wonders contained within. Each page was filled with spells written in glowing letters that changed color as Felix watched, shifting from silver to the softest green. But these were not scary or complicated spells. Instead, Felix saw instructions for making rainbow bridges appear over puddles, for helping lost baby birds find their way home, and for making the most delicious hot chocolate that would never grow cold. There were spells for making music from flower petals, and for painting pictures in the air that would dance and play. Whiskers purred softly and explained that this was the legendary Book of Kind Magic, a collection of spells created by wizards who believed that the best magic came from wanting to help others and make the world more beautiful. The last spell on the final page made Felix's eyes grow wide with wonder. Written in letters that sparkled like diamonds, it was a spell for opening doorways to enchanted realms where young wizards could go on the most amazing adventures, as long as they promised to return home safely before the sun rose. Whiskers stretched and yawned, suggesting that perhaps tonight would be the perfect time to try that very special spell, especially since the moon was full and the stars were particularly bright. Felix carefully read the spell aloud, his voice growing more confident with each magical word. As he spoke, the attic began to fill with the most wonderful warm light, and both he and Whiskers felt themselves growing lighter, as if they were made of moonbeams and stardust. The spell was working, and their magical journey was about to begin. As the spell took hold, Felix and Whiskers found themselves gently floating upward, passing through the cottage roof as if it were made of nothing more than morning mist. They rose higher and higher into the night sky, surrounded by twinkling stars that seemed to welcome them with gentle musical chimes. The sensation of flying was nothing like Felix had imagined. Instead of being frightening or cold, it felt like being wrapped in the softest blanket while floating in a warm, peaceful bath. The world transformed into something from the most wonderful fairy tale. The familiar countryside became a patchwork quilt of glowing colors, with rivers that sparkled like liquid silver and forests that hummed gentle lullabies. Every house they passed had windows that glowed with warm, golden light, and Felix could see families inside, cozy and safe in their homes. As they flew through the star-filled sky, Felix noticed that they were not alone. Other magical creatures were making their own journeys through the night. A family of cloud sheep drifted past on a particularly fluffy white cloud, their woolly coats shimmering with rainbow colors. A group of night butterflies, each one as large as Felix's hand and decorated with patterns that looked like tiny galaxies, fluttered alongside them for a while before spiraling away toward the moon. Whiskers pointed with his paw toward a particularly bright star that was actually a doorway to one of the most beautiful places in all the magical realms, a place called Starlight Meadow. As they drew closer, Felix could see that what had appeared to be a star was actually an archway made of crystallized moonbeams, standing at the edge of the most magnificent meadow he could have imagined. The grass was not ordinary green, but instead glowed with a soft, pearl-like radiance that made everything look as if it were lit from within. They landed softly in the meadow, their feet touching down on grass that felt like silk and made tiny musical notes when they walked on it. Felix looked around in amazement at the wonders surrounding them. Trees grew in spirals, their branches reaching toward the sky and covered with leaves that looked like they had been cut from precious gemstones. When the gentle breeze moved through them, the leaves chimed together like the most beautiful wind chimes. Throughout the meadow, flowers grew that Felix had never seen before. Some were tall as he was, with petals that slowly changed colors, like a sunset in slow motion. Others were tiny and delicate, growing in perfect circles and glowing like little lanterns. When Felix bent down to smell one, it began to sing a soft, sweet melody that made him feel peaceful and happy. Near the center of the meadow stood a fountain that seemed to be made entirely of liquid starlight. Instead of water, streams of glowing silver light bubbled up and cascaded down in patterns that formed pictures in the air. Felix watched in delight as the fountain created images of dancing rabbits, flying fish, and butterflies made of pure light. Whiskers strolled over to the fountain and took a delicate sip of the starlight. He shared that the fountain granted one wish to every visitor, but only wishes that would bring joy to others or make the world more beautiful. Felix thought carefully about his wish. He could ask for anything he wanted, but the idea of making others happy seemed much more appealing. Finally, he approached the fountain and whispered his wish into the streams of light. Immediately, the meadow began to change in the most wonderful way. Every flower started to sing in harmony, creating a gentle song that sounded like the most beautiful lullaby ever written. The melody floated out of the meadow and across the night sky, reaching every child who was trying to fall asleep and filling their dreams with peace and happiness. Felix had wished for a song that would help all children everywhere have the sweetest dreams, and the magic of Starlight Meadow had made it come true. As the lullaby continued to play, other magical creatures began to appear in the meadow. A family of rabbits with fur that sparkled like snow hopped out from behind the singing trees, and a group of tiny fairies, no bigger than Felix's thumb, emerged from the glowing flowers. They all gathered around Felix and Whiskers, welcoming them to their magical home and thanking Felix for his thoughtful wish. The fairies performed a small dance in the air, leaving trails of golden dust that formed words thanking Felix for thinking of others. The rabbits showed him how to make the grass play different musical notes by stepping in certain patterns, and soon Felix and Whiskers were dancing through the meadow, creating their own beautiful song with their footsteps. But as wonderful as Starlight Meadow was, Felix began to notice that the sky was starting to grow just a little bit lighter around the edges, and Whiskers reminded him gently that their magical journey would need to continue soon if they wanted to see everything the night had to offer. Before they left, the fairies gave Felix a small gift, a tiny bottle filled with stardust that would always remind him of their magical meadow and could be used to bring a little bit of magic to ordinary days. As Felix and Whiskers prepared to leave Starlight Meadow, the fairies told them about one more magical place they simply had to visit before returning home. Beyond the meadow, through a grove of singing trees and across a bridge made of rainbow light, lay the Dream Garden, following a path made of smooth, glowing stones that felt warm beneath their feet. Felix and Whiskers made their way through the grove of singing trees. Each tree had its own gentle voice, and as they passed, the trees hummed a soft, traveling song that made walking feel effortless and joyful. The rainbow bridge appeared just as the fairies had described, arching gracefully over a babbling brook that reflected all the colors of the dancing lights in the sky. As Felix and Whiskers crossed the bridge, they could feel the magic growing stronger with each step. The Dream Garden was the most peaceful place Felix had ever seen. Rows of dream plants grew in neat, curved lines, each one tended by gardeners who looked like they were made of soft moonlight. Some plants grew dreams that looked like soap bubbles filled with swirling, colorful scenes. Others produced dreams that hung like fruit from delicate branches, glowing softly and swaying in the gentle breeze. An elderly dream gardener with a kind face and robes that shimmered like water approached Felix and Whiskers. She mentioned that she had been expecting them, having seen Felix's wish at the Starlight Fountain. She explained that because Felix had wished for something to help others, he had earned the right to choose a special dream for himself, one that he could return to whenever he needed comfort or wonder. He saw dreams of flying through clouds soft as cotton, dreams of underwater cities where fish swam through the air, and dreams of libraries where books read themselves aloud. But the dream that called to Felix was a simple one, growing on a small plant near the center of the garden. It was a dream of home, but home filled with even more magic than usual. In this dream, his cottage was exactly the same, but every object held a little bit of wonder. Books that told new stories every time you opened them, a fireplace that painted pictures in its flames, and a kitchen where ingredients danced together to create the most delicious meals. The dream gardener smiled and carefully picked the dream for Felix, placing it in a small silver box that would keep it safe until he was ready to use it. She explained that this dream would be waiting for him whenever he went to sleep. As the first hints of dawn began to appear on the horizon, Felix and Whiskers knew it was time to return home. The book of kind magic, which had been floating gently beside them throughout their journey, opened to the page with the spell for returning home safely. This time, instead of flying, they found themselves walking along a path made of soft, silver light that led them gently back toward their cottage. As they walked, Felix felt all the magic of the night settling into his heart like warm honey, and he knew that he would carry these memories with him always. The path led them back to their own front door just as the sun painted the first golden streaks across the morning sky. Whiskers stretched and yawned, commenting that magical journeys always made him sleepy and suggesting that they both get some rest. Back in the cottage, Felix carefully placed the book of kind magic on his bedside table, where it would be waiting for the next time he wanted to explore magical realms. The tiny bottle of stardust and the silver box containing his special dream sat beside it, glowing softly in the morning light. As Felix settled into his comfortable bed, with Whiskers curled up beside him, he realized that the most wonderful part of the entire adventure was not just the magic he had seen, but the magic he had shared. Felix closed his eyes and felt the special dream beginning to unfold around him. In it, his cottage was filled with gentle magic. Whiskers told him stories in a voice like silk, and every day held the promise of new wonders to discover. And so Felix's magical journey comes to a gentle close. Just like Felix, you carry your own special magic within you. The magic of kindness, curiosity, and wonder. As you settle into your dreams tonight, remember that the most beautiful adventures often begin with a heart ready to help others and eyes ready to see magic in everyday moments. Let Felix's lullaby carry you into the sweetest dreams, where you too might discover magical meadows, meet friendly creatures, and find that every dream is a doorway to infinite possibilities. Sleep peacefully, knowing that tomorrow holds its own quiet magic, waiting just for you. Sweet dreams.